Hi again, everyone. Steve Jones with Phil Grosz, Todd Sadowski. Welcome to the Blue White Tailgate Show presented by Rich Coast Coffee. It is a bye week, so let's just relax and have, oh, wait a minute. There's actually news on this bye week, it turns out, and the news is significant for Penn State football going forward. It deals with the reduction in sanctions after 1 year after they were put in place by the NCAA. Let's look at the new numbers that they will deal with. Instead of going 15 and 65, it's going to be 20 and up to 75, then 25-80, and then back to a normal setting for Penn State and a level playing field by the 2016 season. Phil, you've dealt with the recruiting aspect of this your entire career. What does this mean?
It means competition has now arrived with the Penn State football program and practicing on game day on a Saturday in 3 years or 4 years rather than 10 years when people thought this sanction was really going to impact it that much, Steve. It really has reduced the number of years to where Penn State will really be competitive, be able to get involved with the new playoff system and get involved maybe with the conference championship, hopefully in 2014.
Todd, there has been an intelligence with which Bill O'Brien has handled this, even-keeled, positive. I mean, you cannot ask somebody to have handled in public the way he's handled this.
Well, there's a right man at the right time, and Coach Bill O'Brien is certainly that guy for Penn State. And you know, besides the entertainment value that the three of us bring to this show, right, it's a football program. But one of the things I think we need to mention, right, is the recommendations. This doesn't happen unless Penn State has been following the recommendations from the free report.
Exactly.
As we talked about just a few minutes ago, 112 of those have been completed out of 119. So yes, we're going to talk about the football impact, and we're all excited about the potential for Penn State to get right back to the top of the ladder as far as football goes. But first and foremost, right, the recommendations are in place, and they're making a lot of progress as far as the way they handle those things.
Time now for Signing Off with Bill O'Brien, presented by the Family Clothesline, sounding off about the NCAA decision.
Well, it was welcome news, and I was extremely happy for a few groups of people. I was happy for our staff. This is an excellent football staff of people here that have worked extremely hard every day since we arrived here at Penn State. I'm happy for our players. They've acted the right way off the field, and I believe they've performed admirably on the field. And so I'm very happy for them, and I'm happy for the people here at Penn State. Penn State is a fantastic university, a place where you can get a great degree, and football-wise, you can play competitive Big Ten football. So I'm happy for a lot of people today.
And that was courtesy of the Big Ten Network. Now, they're also coming off a football win along the way. They beat Kent State in their final non-conference game of the season, and Bill O'Brien feels that his team is moving forward in the 2013 season.
I think we did, yeah. I think we improved. I think anytime you win, Rich, like I've said it's like salt water. It cures a lot of things. And it also, it gives you a chance to go back and watch the tape and, again, try to dissect the things that you're doing wrong and try to improve. But I think anytime you win, your team gets better.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that performance a little bit later in the show. As always, we have our good friend Fran Fisher, who, by the way, celebrated his 90th birthday this week. Fran Fisher, presented by the Penn State Bookstore, upon further review.
I have to say it's a little difficult to be nostalgic about an open date, but it does give me an opportunity to vent. Ooh, that can be dangerous, but here goes. I had a wonderful experience with the 1973 team a couple of weeks ago. When I was with them at a reception the evening after the game, I asked Mark Markovich how Coach Paterno was worked into the halftime introduction script. He said, "He was never mentioned." How could that be? Was it a high-priced PR firm that advised the university to pretend Paterno never existed? The same people who might have advised the statue removal. And, of course, his record was erased, courtesy of Mr. Emmert.
I love Penn State. I love you guys.
It's heartbreaking for me to realize that down the road, Penn State students might be asking, who was Joe Paterno? But then again, how will they know Joe Paterno ever existed?
I got more from them than they ever got from me.
That be. This is Fran Fisher with Upon Further Review.
old friend Fran Fisher with his opinions here on Blue White Tailgate. All right, coming up, we have a lot to talk about, obviously, here on this set because there's a lot that's obviously happened just in this week alone. And in a few minutes, we'll be talking with Josh Moyer from ESPN.com. You're out. Moyer's in.
All right,
okay?
sounds good.
You got that?
I'll keep loose. I'll keep loose. I'll
I'm
be
a little
back later.
concerned, though. There's a segment, I think you get the center chair.
See you in a little while.
Okay? It's a bye week. We're a little looser. Moyer steps into that chair. Phil and I will be back with you in moments. We continue with Blue White Tailgate presented by Grosz Coffee.
And as a result of that, it seemed appropriate and right to recognize that progress at the same time holding them accountable in the future for the actions that are part of the culture change that was embedded in the agreement signed by Penn State and in the NCAA.
All right, so that was yesterday. In a few moments, we'll be joined by Josh Moyer of ESPN, and also Phil Grosz will rejoin us. Let's take a look at the sanctions and where they were and what is coming up. This is what it was going to be. It was actually a 6-year ban altogether, 6 years altogether, in a combination of scholarships, bowl games, and what's not included there was the ability to transfer freely without the penalty for 1 full year, which was in the 2012 sanction. Now this is what it looks like, okay? 20 scholarships. Phil mentioned, of course, about the change in that, 75, and then 25, 80, and then back to normal, 25, 85, and a level playing field across the board for the Nittany Lions with all the other schools in the country. So Bill O'Brien, obviously pleased, but at the same time keeping things in perspective about the reduction.
We have to keep doing what we're doing, which is working extremely hard to do what's right for our football program here, for our players, our student athletes, and most importantly for the university. And I just know that, you know, when the rules change a little bit, we just adapt to those rules. And right now the rules are that we can sign a few more guys and start to get back to 85 scholarships a little bit sooner.
All right, so the two good-looking guys, Josh, Phil. Okay, before I get to why, I want to talk for a moment about Bill O'Brien. His attitude from day one and as to how he has handled this publicly. How important has that been in Penn State's attitude in all of this?
Well, I think it's been paramount. I mean, not just is Bill O'Brien kind of battling through the sanctions, but he's almost done it with a grin on his face. I mean, you look at what he's had to overcome, you know, it's pretty, you know, amazing, obviously. You do reduce scholarships, you still have an 8-4 record, you come over, you know, an 0-2 start, and, you know, he's constantly reiterated, you know, hey, we have these penalties, he hasn't gotten down on himself, he hasn't done it publicly, and to have that as the face of the university, I think, has been really important for Penn State moving forward.
A different personality whines, moans, complains, and uses excuses. This guy has said, okay, this is it, this is how we do it.
It was just perfect the way he handled it. I personally don't think that another person beside Bill O'Brien could have done a better job. The best thing that ever happened to Penn State is they had some trouble in getting the head coach that they wanted to when they were going through the process trying to find somebody. They ended up with the perfect man to handle the situation that came in July of 2012, Steve.
As I've said from day one, just on my side of it, there's no handbook for this. He has written a handbook as to how to properly do this. Okay, so why now? Why do you think they ended up doing this, the NCAA?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons why it was done now. There's a lot of outside circumstances with the NCAA. You talk about how George Mitchell gave his year-end report. And I always thought, after talking to some people, that was probably the saving grace for Penn State and its program. If the sanctions were ever going to be reduced early, I thought George Mitchell might be the key.
Yeah, and a man of great integrity, as everyone knows. He has a spotless reputation. So, Josh, what about the door being open to further reductions if the reports continue to read the way they've been for the past year?
Well, the NCAA said the other day that, you know, they wouldn't rule out not having the postseason ban in effect this year, but you know, some fans took that to mean, oh, well, that means we could have, you know, go to a bowl this season. That's not going to happen. Joe Shad spoke to Mark Emmert, And he said that's not in anyone's mind right now. What could happen is next year, next August, next September, after Mitchell releases his second annual report, we could see a reduction then. But I don't think we're going to see one before that. Do I think one could happen? Absolutely. If Penn State stays at the pace it's at right now, we might see maybe them knock a year off the postseason. It's obviously, a bit early to be talking about that, but, the route Penn State's on, I certainly like their chances.
Fans wonder about the restoration of the 111 wins. Your thoughts?
It's something that isn't off the table, so that's good news. And to be quite frank, Steve, when I did see that penalty, that was the one, to me, that was the most curious, because you don't have competitive advantage. I don't really know what the NCAA got out of that, other than kind of shaming Joe Paterno to an extent. So do I think in the future that's something that could be, restored? Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of this can be undone, especially as the public opinion has kind of turned. Yeah. So, I mean, that's something we'll definitely have to keep an eye on.
All right, let's take a look at the executive committee here as to just very quickly on the screen. This is what they said, and I think fans heard this along the way, and about the athletics integrity agreement, which you heard at the beginning. Okay, so now we get into Mark Emmert's role in this. And our John Stroh was on the conference call yesterday, and he asked this rather pointed question.
President Emmert, you had said earlier that when you handed down the sanctions that Penn State had a culture problem with its football program. Having seen, or now with this step, are you still of that opinion?
Well, I'll refer to Senator Mitchell for his observations about what has and hasn't changed in the university over the past year. But certainly the executive committee, again, the membership of which is sitting here, can address what they saw or didn't see in deliberating on the sanctions. But certainly the interest in seeing change behaviorally at the university was central to what the athletics integrity agreement was about.
It was an answer. I mean, really, I mean, this, no offense, but that it was an answer. I mean, that's all he get. But there's no answer.
I thought it was interesting. The executive committee of the NCAA contacted the Big Ten presidents. They contacted other people, and they decided they were going to go through the proper channels and rules and guidelines of the NCAA. They weren't going to make the same mistake twice that Emmert made back in July of 2012 when he essentially did it all on his own.
Josh, you decided to take a little time to talk with some of the students, some fans along the way. You were interested by their reaction. It wasn't quite what you expected.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we'd see, a lot of optimism. I didn't think there'd be celebrating in the streets by any means, but, talking to a bunch of students, former players, Matt McGloin, Stephon Morris, what I got from it was, hey, this is good, but it's not good enough. People had a wave of relief, a wave of happiness, but that's faded now. The afterglow is gone here, and it's switched back to anger. It's a nice consolation to have, but it almost seems to me that fans think it's a door prize for being wronged.
Josh, thanks for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We'll come back. We'll take a look back at Kent State. Later, we'll also talk with John Bacon as we continue with the Blue-White Tailgate.
Any of that debate. Although Paterno gets his due as far as building Penn State football and Penn State University.
We are back on the Blue-White Tailgate, and this segment sponsored by Central Pennsylvania Dock and Door and Recruiting. Well, this, with the news of the NCAA, we got to move the segment up, guys, and it's so big. We plucked another member of the Blue-White Illustrated staff, Ryan Snyder, kind enough to join us. Phil, let's go into the numbers of this thing. What's the first thing you think of for recruiting impact?
Well, for the class of 2014, it's going to affect numbers. They're going to have 75 scholarships available for that class. They'll probably take between 20 and 23 recruits. And the reason they could probably take up to 22 or 23 is that the kids that will enroll in January, Michael O'Connor and Antoine White, a quarterback and a defensive tackle, they'll be able to count on the class of 2013. That's because they didn't fill up that class to the 25 scholarship limit. So you don't have an impact on the class of 2014 like that.
And the total numbers goes up from 65 to 75, what they're eligible to do, but they're actually a little above 65. So talk about what the numbers mean and how it'll affect it overall with the total scholarship.
Well, they'll go up to 75 for the class of 2014. 2015 it goes to 80, and then 2015 and beyond, 16 and beyond, it goes to 85. And that means they'll be able to, in those years, to actually bring in 25 scholarship kids to sign on a letter of intent day, as long as they don't reach over those numbers for those particular years. And for the class of 2014, it's 75, and they're at 71 right now. And as we said, they'll probably be able to sign between 20 and 23 kids for the class of 2014.
All right, I know Ryan is chomping at the bit. Before we get to Ryan, we want to hear from Coach O'Brien and his take on recruiting.
And we'll meet about it this week. We have a bye this week, so we have a little bit more time to meet on recruiting. But obviously it will affect recruiting because we can go out there and recruit more young men now. So, but we'll meet about it this week and try to strategize what road we're gonna head down and how we're gonna handle this.
And he does a good job disguising that smile because he knows he's got a few guys he can get. Ryan, I can just say go. I mean, this has immediate impact right now, but 2014 and beyond that. I know you spent Tuesday night on the phone with a lot of the recruits that are thinking about coming here. So what'd you find out?
They're thrilled. I mean, they really are. The guys that were already committed, they understand, what this program's all about. But then when you look down the road a bit, I mean, now the coaches can really stress competition, and that's really important because there are some guys that are already committed right now, but behind the scenes they'll tell you that they were a little worried about what this team could possibly look like if there were a few injuries. So that's so important now that O'Brien can go into these houses and stress that competition isn't going to be a problem. And when you look at some of the guys that are already committed, Michael O'Connor, DeAndre Tompkins, Chris Godwin, those guys are excited now because they know that it's going to be even more intense in practice. And that's very important. It was something that was kind of going overlooked a bit. When you look at a guy like Troy Reeder, for example, linebacker position is pretty thin, but now they can add a couple more guys, and it's going to be exponentially important as far as practice reps and then what they translation into the game time.
Well, obviously they've changed the gradual scholarship. Unprecedented news, never done that before. Bowl eligibility may change as well. Did you talk to any of the guys about that? Is that a recruiting tool that they're really interested in?
They're happy about that, but these guys are so well-rounded outside the field that it's not as important as people would actually think. Penn State goes after a quality young man, and it's across the board. I mean, that's just how it is with these guys. So, they're excited about being able to play in a bowl game maybe in a year or two, but it's not the most important thing because they understand how important academics are. They understand how important the community relationships are, and that's the character that Penn State goes after, and that'll play out throughout the next couple of years.
The level playing field. Coach O'Brien's excited about that, and you need that to compete in the Big Ten and really go after the championship.
Well, sure. I think that was the biggest part of the sanctions when you look at it. Like Brian said, I don't think the bowls factor in, the bowl ban factored in as much as the numbers. It affects you on the practice field, getting ready, and it'll be able now to change some of the things they do getting ready for a game on Saturday. But like Ryan said, competition is the most important thing. Competition is what makes any athlete a better player and more ready to go. And I think that's the thing that's maybe going to excite the kids from the class of 2015, Ryan, and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Well, Phil, Ryan, thank you very much. We got a lot to talk about in future weeks, don't we now? Recruiting has really all of a sudden just ramped up, so it's going to be great.
Yeah, it certainly will.
Ryan, thank you very much. Obviously, you guys can pay attention to Blue White Illustrated for a lot of the recent information. We'll be right back on the Blue White Tailgate and actually talk about a football game, the offense against Kent State.
Welcome back to Blue White Tailgate, presented by Rich Coast Coffee. You know what? For the heck of it, guys, let's talk football.
All right.
You want to talk some football? All right, let's talk some football. All right, you're in?
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
First of all, I'd like to point out, I thought you looked a little too comfy in the center chair.
Yeah, notice that they're moving me all around here. I've called all kinds of audibles. First I'm in, then I'm out, then I'm in the middle chair.
Well,
I'm right where I would like to be, right here on the left side.
The football team got to be versatile.
That's right.
So you got to do the same thing.
It's the versatility.
Exactly
Thank you,
right.
Phil.
All right, so the offense goes out and puts together a good solid performance, especially running the football. It was really a surgical performance in a lot of ways.
You know, that's the thing that impressed me most in the game against Kent State. The triumvirate at the tailback position. You got Zach Zwinick, the man power, runs the ball between the tackles. I thought Bill Belton really emerged, showed up that he's going to be a versatile type of player, bring a lot to the offensive philosophy, and that home run potential of Keel Lynch just brings that third dimension to the running game.
Let's take a look now at our drive of the game, brought to you by our good friends at Stocker Chevrolet, located on the Bender Pike across from the Nittany Mall. Drive of the game. This game was actually hanging in the balance, 14-0, where a big play or a drive could change it. And Penn State got things going with Bill Belton on the ground that you just mentioned here. And look at the cutback ability there, spinning and picking up extra yardage on this particular play. Penn State just kept pounding away at it. And Belt was able to squirt through holes. Luke Wallet making the tackle there. Then Christian Hackenberg putting it, looking, and he says, you know what, I can run. Big strides, picks up. Now he goes to the air, throws it, and tried to throw that fade to Allen Robinson. But that was on second down. That set up that quarterback sneak. And then it's Bill Belton who drives it down inside the 5. Turned out it fumbles at the end, but the ground caused the fumble. In fact, you'll see his knee goes down, the elbow goes down, and that is not a fumble. And then all of a sudden you bring in the Diesel, and there it goes. The Diesel goes airborne, and Zwinick brings it home from there. That is our Stocker Chevrolet drive of the game, brought to you by Stocker Chevrolet, located on the Bender Pike across the Nittany Mall. And that drive of the game featured what we talked about, Todd. They ran the football.
53 carries for the offense. Phil brings the word triumvirate to it. And all three guys, 14, 15, and 13 carries for Belton, Zwinick, and Lynch. Nice balance in the run game. And one of the strangest things I'd like to say about the offense is that Hackenberg didn't really have that great of a game as far as the completion percentage goes. And I kind of like that, because if you're going to have a little bit of a stumble, the weather was bad, gives him some experience in that regard. Do it before you get into the Big Ten and see how you bounce back. But he did have 13 completions, and they went for 178 yards. So when he did strike a completion, they were getting it down the field.
That's a good point. Miles Diefenbach, by the way, and that group up front got the job done.
It was a great game. Kent State was a good defense. They had some really good players. Roosevelt Nix was one of the best players we've seen, ever on film. And so we got communicated well. We were running downhill. We were getting physical, and that's what you want.
And you know what? It ended up, Bill Belton ended up being the offensive player of the week. Some versatility, 90 on the ground, touchdown catch as well in the first quarter.
Yeah, he ran the ball extremely well. And he really excelled in the play Penn State likes to run. They like to pull their tackle, Donovan Smith. Usually you pull a guard, and Belton had a beautiful cutback run on the one drive where Donovan Smith came and pulled, and it's a play that you should look for with Belton down the line.
All right, now our hit of the week has a little different twist to it along the way. Now normally the hit of the week is a defensive player making a big hit or an offensive player delivering a blow. Then there's this one. Our hit of the week involves Zach Zwinick going into the end zone. All right, and yeah, I'm in, and I'm down. And needless to say, on the sideline, they made sure that they gave him the business a little bit for taking that hit.
It's usually the other way around for Zwinick, too. I mean, that's the guy that you want. You hand him the ball, and you need a couple of yards, and he got pounded as soon as he crossed the line. But he gets the last laugh. He gets those 6 points, 3 touchdowns again for Zwinick. And, man, he just runs downhill. He is never brought down usually, except for our hit of the week, on that first contact. Really impressive.
That's the consummate downhill runner right there.
Yep, you're right. He packs a lot of punch when he's running with the football, Steve.
So let's take a look at the Penn State offense at this particular point and look at last year to this year. And I think the numbers, I think, would surprise some people where they are on averages so far. Now, one thing that has to change, though, the turnover margin does have to change for this football team. I think if you're going to go through an 8-game conference schedule, Phil, they're -3 through non-conference. Being a +8 I think would really help. That'd be a +1 each game.
Yeah, I agree. You can't historically, as a football team, have a minus turnover ratio and end up winning big football games like when you play Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, and Wisconsin down the road. That, and they got to do better on third down.
Yeah, sure.
Those are two real keys.
Which is getting there, by the way. That number is gradually going up as time goes along. And also points off of turnovers. They only have 6 so far off the turnovers, and you'd like to see that get to be higher than that. What about Christian Hackenberg? I thought you made a good point that when he completed it, they moved the ball downfield.
Yeah, absolutely. He had the one stumble again, threw it back, and he let go of the ball. That's happened a couple times this year, but you can maybe throw that out with the wet ball that he was dealing with. But it's really just the growth of Christian Hackenberg. It's really fun to watch, get him through the non-conference schedule. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles some of the road games in the Big Ten, some of these venues. Starts off at Indiana, so it's not exactly the toughest place to go play, but we've had some close games at Indiana when we've been on the road. All 3 contests, the last 3, have been within 6 points. So I'm really interested to see how he handles the road Big Ten game.
Bill O'Brien's thoughts on his freshman quarterback.
Yeah, I think he had some good throws. I think he had some throws that he'd want back, but you know, he'll get better from this. He'll watch the tape. I think he's probably a little frustrated tonight, but that's okay. That's the mark of a fantastic player, and that's what he is. And he'll get better, and you know, you'll see improvement as we go on here.
And you will. And I think you picked a good point. On a day where they win 34-0, he doesn't have his best day. He's also 18 years old. He's 4 games into his career. There's a lot more to go in all this. Now, coming up, we will flip over and take a look at the Penn State defense that pitched a shutout. Later in the show, I'll sit down with John Bacon, talk about his new book. All that and more as we continue our Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee after this.
Bill got him all in the team room and said immediately, first words, we are not here to understand the rules, we're here to follow them.
Welcome back. Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee. Steve Jones, Todd Sadowski, Phil Grosz. Great to have you on board with us as well as we work our way through this bye week that's been an active bye week, about as active a bye week as you can ask for. Let's talk about the Penn State defense. And Bill O'Brien and his football team pitched a shutout against Kent State.
Watch. You guys need to ask me some defensive questions. They're all offensive questions right now. Defense just pitched a shutout, and you guys were all over them last week, and they just pitched a shutout. So can we get some defensive questions or what? No? I thought the defense played a hell of a football game today. They pitched a shutout, and I think John Butler and that crowd of coaches over there and that crowd of players over there did a hell of a job.
Bill O'Brien with his thoughts as to what his team. But you know what, Phil? This is an era of college football where a lot of offense is on the table. I mean, for example, Alabama wins, but they gave up 42 in doing it, for example, against Texas A&M, which is a great offensive team with a great quarterback. But to pitch a shutout in this day and age against another FBS school actually is very impressive.
You're no question about that, Steve. Today, if you want to win any game, especially a big game, you've got to score some points to win football games. That's just the nature of the way college football at the Division I level has progressed. It's more like the NFL with every passing year. And it was good to see some of the guys, especially on the offensive team with Barnes, get a little bit of sack time and get involved in the rush. But 2 guys in the secondary, Steve, that really impressed me with their play was Ryan Kaiser and Jordan Lucas. Yeah. I thought they both really were good in man-to-man coverage.
And big plus in that game. Let's take a look at some of the numbers now on the Penn State defense. We talked about the offense before. And look at all the numbers, Todd, trending down in 2013 as opposed to what we saw at 2012.
And I really like the yards rushing against, just a little over 100 per game. That is really impressive. The yards passing, 183. Again, you mentioned how pass-happy college football is. To have that number under 200 yards is really good. And to dissect the shutout a little bit more, they only allowed 9 first downs. We play 60 minutes of football in a college game. It wasn't a shortened game. I don't care who you're playing. If you only allowed 9 first downs, and it wasn't like they kept turning it over, missed a lot of field goals. No. They just simply didn't allow them to move down the field. Really nice job.
Yeah, they had the ball on the plus side of the field one time, so field position played a part, and they missed a field goal on that, and they did that. The question is now they're going to go into the Big Ten, Phil. Indiana, Kevin Wilson will open it wide open. okay, when they play them next week. So I think the question is, how good are they? We're about to find out.
Well, we certainly will find out. Right now, Sudfeld, their quarterback, is the leading passer in the Big Ten, and they have a great group of wide receivers. So the cornerbacks are going to be tested, and Amos and I don't know. I know Ryan hurt himself a little bit, and the other safeties in the defensive secondary. They're going to have to be on the top of their A game because they're really going to be tested by this Indiana offense.
And Ryan Kaiser, by the way, is our Defensive Player of the Week. He played a solid game, as Phil mentioned. He also had his first career interception, and the redshirt junior out of Selinsgrove. Look at that outstanding play there. Here's a guy, former run-on, ends up earning a scholarship. His instincts are exemplary. He picks up a step and a half sometimes just by how he reads. Look how he plays the run here. He takes down Reardon for a loss there. He played really, really well, which now brings us to the guys up front that set the table, Todd. That's the defensive line. There's one guy in particular you wanted to take a closer look.
That's right. We had a Deion Barnes sighting. I mean, obviously he's been getting a lot of attention over there on the left defensive end. Had a great year last year, but interestingly enough, it took Mother Nature a shower from her to ignite his fire.
Oh yeah, I love arena games like that. It took me back to Little League when I played, you know, back down, I remember we played a team down South Philly called Sharks, and we used to play in like these big mud puddles. I mean, you know, you gotta avoid the mud puddle and things like that. It just took me back in the day, you know. I love playing games like that.
The Nittany Lions love seeing the defensive end wreak havoc with the opponent's passing game. On this play in the first quarter, Deion uses an inside move, busts through from the left side, and forces the fumble. It's his first sack of the year. A fantastic freshman season means more double teams to fight through for number 18.
I've seen a few, probably about a total of like 5 or 6 this year. So, I mean, but like I said, we're all working together as a group, and it's freeing up other guys.
The loss to Central Florida is a humbling experience for the entire defense. Against the Golden Flashes, everyone contributes up front in the trenches.
They're chippy, and they have 2 guys on me, so, you know, I think it freed up a lot of other guys. And the focus really can't go on me. I mean, I feel like we're playing as a great group right now because, I mean, they double teaming Daquan, which is freeing up Austin and Bob's. As you see, Bob's got a sack today, and they're slide protection. Sometimes they slide protection to me, and then it's opening up for CJ. So
the Nittany Lions post a shutout in their final non-conference game. They quickly applied lessons learned from the setback to UCF.
Everybody's just saying, you know, we got to keep, you know, doing what we do and just playing well, playing hard, and you know, it'll come. Obviously, last week was tough, but you know, we had a good chance this week, another opportunity to go out and try to get a team win.
You just got to start each week over. You know, it's a clean slate, and watch film and diagnose that, and just work as a team to figure out how to get the win. And I think that we have a lot of competitive guys that look forward each week to finding ways to get that win. So I think we're going to be all right. And you know, like I said, this is a really big win for us.
It certainly was a big win for the team, and what I like hearing from Deion Barnes is he's not concerned about his numbers and the lack of sacks that he might want. He's talking about taking some of the pressure off the other guys and the defensive line working together. If Daquan Jones is double-teamed, somebody else gets in there.
You're seeing a lot of teams now with a quick-hit passing game where sometimes the release is 1.8 to sometimes 2.9 from the time of the snap. You're not going to get a lot of sacks.
Not easy to get in the backfield that quickly.
Yeah, you're just not going to. That's the way it's designed to work. All right, coming up, I will sit down with John Bacon. His book looks back at last season at Northwestern, Ohio State, Michigan, and yes, Penn State, where he received a lot of insight from a lot of players, especially the seniors. And then the triumvirate reunites for the final segment as we continue on Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee after this. Welcome back. Great to have you with us on Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee. It's my pleasure to bring in the author of the book, Fourth and Long. It's a New York Times bestseller, The Fight for the Soul of College Football by John U. Bacon. A great read. And John, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Steve, always a pleasure.
You had to sit down, though, and do this in 4 areas: Northwestern, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. How much did it take for you to divide your time, and did you end up then leaning on go-to guys when you'd go back to a campus?
Great question, of course, and in the media know that this is a very difficult juggling act. There's a reason why no one has ever tried this before. It's insane. And I got 15,000 miles on my car from Evanston to State College to prove this. Yeah. Those are long drives. We looked at Penn State for the players and obviously what was going on. Ohio State, I focused on Urban Meyer. At Michigan, I focused on the athletic director, Dave Brennan, probably the most high profile out there right now. He's on 60 Minutes and all that.
A real businessman's athletic director.
Domino's Pizza CEO, and I know you have Domino's Pizza in State College. So, then at Northwestern, I looked at everybody, kind of put it all back together. The president, the AD, the head coach, and of course, Kane Coulter, the pre-med quarterback. But no question, the trick for us was the access I got at Penn State was so great, thanks to Bill O'Brien and the players and the staff. The story there was more incredible. I mean, you're as close to it as I was, man. I mean, team dinners, team meetings, quarterback meetings, you name it, practice locker rooms and so on. However proud you are right now of that 2012 team and what they pulled off in the face of unbelievable odds, you'll be 10 times more proud when you realize how scary it really was, how close it really was to imploding. When you have half the underclassmen telling the seniors, we're leaving, and you're not going to have a team. And they're believing it, and they should have. And then, of course, you see what these players and the staffers, and Bill O'Brien, give them all due respect, pulled off to save the team and then to save the season after an 0-2 start. I have never seen character up close quite the same way.
And actually save the future of the program. That's what they did, John. They saved the future of the program.
You don't save that team, you don't save that season. If the underclassmen leave, you're done. If you're 4-8, you cannot recruit.
Did you go in with any preconceived notion, and did a preconceived notion get blown up, or was there one that was reinforced?
I don't think I had too much of a preconceived notion, because my whole thing was Sadowski and all that. It's already happened. It's been hashed out. I wasn't here for it. It's, you know, all that's a chapter in the book, the whole previous 30 years, really. If I had any preconceived notion, I was going to pick up from after Sadowski, after Paterno. So we're never really part of any of that debate. Although Paterno gets his due as far as building Penn State football and Penn State University.
You took a lot of time in this book actually to say, hey, excuse me, but when it comes to culture, he set a culture that any coach can build upon.
And
Is
Bill
that
O'Brien
correct to
was
say
smart
that?
enough, dead on. And Bill was smart enough to not break was not, not fix was not broken. When you got Pete Massaro at the Starbucks and the new employee wants to give him a free latte, and the manager knows you can't do that because of NCAA rules, they had trained not just the team but the entire town to follow these rules. So that makes Bill's job very easy. The problems he had were not internal, they're external.
And then Bill O'Brien, a true man of character.
No question.
And this character comes through, I think, John, in two areas. Number one, when you're riding high and going well, but number two, when things around you are a disaster. The character Bill O'Brien showed in both areas were?
In the bad days, they spent no time talking about what's wrong. Within minutes of Emmert's press conference that got a long reaction, I'm sure, around the Penn State community, Bill got them all in the, geez, oh Pete, Steve. Bill got them all in the team room and said immediately, first words, we are not here to understand the rules, we're here to follow them. We are done with this. If you spend any time caterwauling about that situation, or players who are leaving, or Sam Ficken missing kicks against Virginia, or the ball being stretched out over Nebraska, this team was disciplined like I've seen no other the entire season, with not spending any time focusing on the past or what you can't control. And that's how they pulled it off.
And even when they were riding high and he had success, he always had himself grounded. And I felt that was another sign of steady rock Bill O'Brien character.
The amazing thing about Bill from the start to the finish of last season is, for a guy who's never been there before as a head coach, it seemed like he'd been head coach for 10 years. He wasn't fazed by all the problems they were facing, and he wasn't overly giddy about the good news when it was coming. He stayed grounded, his team stayed grounded. I don't recall Bill O'Brien ever taking a shred of credit for any of this. And when you read the book, you'll realize how much credit this man deserves.
Michael Motti and Michael Zordich certainly are critical parts and sources for you throughout. How did you find them to be, and what kind of men do you find them to be?
Well, as far as your earlier question, too, about preconceived notions, the easy preconceived notion is, I'm going to walk into a disaster. I'm going to be witness to a train wreck. And that's the best case scenario. I did not expect to see things as bad as they were initially, nor things as unbelievable as they were from Zordich and Motti. All the players give them the most credit amongst the senior leaders, and they had a great senior class. Farrell and Jordan Hill, and the list goes on. But those guys, man, woke up Tuesday morning after these sanctions, looked at their cell phones and said, we are in it deep. Yeah. And 6 o'clock in the morning, they go to Fitzgerald's office, the strength coach. Yeah. They're making a game plan. Bill O'Brien comes down, and we got to figure out who's calling who to make these guys stay. And they did not get any sleep at all, really, that whole first week.
You love college football.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, you're deeply ingrained as a historian at Michigan with football. After doing this book, bestseller now, New York Times, do you love the game more?
That's really good. I've done 50 or 60 interviews. Well done, Steve. I love the game more. And great line from Lily Tomlin, no matter how cynical you get, you can't quite keep up. Yeah. So for all the cynicism, man, you spent a season inside that locker room, as I did. Man,
and the other locker rooms.
And they all ran quite well also, must be said. These are 4, in many ways, exemplary programs. Man, when I saw how Penn State did it, when NCAA played Grinch and took all your toys away, and they had Christmas anyway, and by all accounts, the best Christmas they've ever had. Yeah. They all said it was their favorite season. The NCAA, I'm sure, was not counting on that. Yeah. The irony here is, take it all away, they loved each other and the Penn State fans and the community more than ever. And so I love the game now more than ever, having watched Penn State especially, but the other programs too. I am more concerned about the business of it than I ever have. You got to separate the two. The game itself is healthy and great. The leadership of it, I'm deeply concerned.
You're a pro's pro. This was quite a read, and it was really meticulous and well done. Thank you so much for the time you gave us.
Steve, thank you.
John U. Bacon, he wrote the book, 4th and Long, The Fight for the Soul of College Football, and this book was written with a lot of heart and soul as well. We'll come back with more on Blue White Tailgate, presented by Rich Coast Coffee, after this. All right, we are what do we call in the industry the G Block. And you notice the smiles when we get to G Block. That's the final segment. And let's get to the health update on this football team. And really, it's a fairly healthy football team. I mean, Ryan Kaiser, Mike Hull's day to day. And then, of course, you know the last 3, of course, have been out. So that's good news, and the bye week also helps in that regard, Phil, just to heal a team up at a time heading into the Big Ten.
And I think that's most important with Mike Hull, because he is, as Bill O'Brien has said, is our best pure athlete and our best player on defense. And it'll be good to have him back, especially going up against Indiana in their passing game.
And by the way, Indiana also has a bye week, so that's something else.
That's right.
Both teams are in the same boat.
It's going to work. Both teams are going to come into the game fresh, and for Indiana, well, that offense, if they're fresh legs with that offense, look out, because they can really, really throw the ball.
All right, rack up the top 25. Let's see what we have here. It's Alabama, Oregon, still in the 1-2 spots. Ohio State right there in that 4 spot. They've got Wisconsin. We'll talk about that in a moment. Let's take a look at the games of the week in the top 25. LSU, Georgia, intriguing, guys. Okay, pick. Come on. You got to pick some games.
I'll go LSU. Georgia's had a lot of tough contests right off the bat, haven't they? That schedule's been brutal for those guys.
Now, the big one here is Wisconsin, Ohio State, Phil.
Yeah, no question about which team has the tougher time preparing for their opponent. I think it's going to end up being Ohio State. How do you really show in practice that physical nature of their offensive line and their 3 running backs? Now they can, I think Wisconsin can really show to a better degree what they can do to defense in Braxton Miller.
Okay, if Braxton Miller gets hurt, if Braxton Miller doesn't perform first 3 series,
I think they'll stick with Braxton Miller, but how about Kenny Guyton, 2-time Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week, the guy's been, and he's got to go right back to holding the clipboard for Braxton Miller, who steps in there. But I'm really interested to see what happens, because there's not a lot of people outside of the Big Ten, maybe even inside the Big Ten, that believe in Ohio State. The conference is down from a national standpoint. So if Ohio State struggles with Wisconsin at home, what does it do to their ranking? Are they going to stay up there all year long? Because this is a big one for the Buckeyes.
All right, so at this point, we usually do our keys to the weekend. The key for each of us is how to get these wonderful recliners from Aaron's on the set out of the building with nobody noticing. That's our key. What's your key? Thanks for joining us on Blue White Tailgate, presented by Rich Coast Coffee.